Well, hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee, meteorologist Joe Rayo, and Tropical Storm Fay. So we've got a threesome thing going over here. We've got Fay developed this afternoon. Mr. Rayo, no big surprise when you think about it with everything that's been going on. When I was watching the recon aircraft going in there this afternoon and noticed also on the radar some convection forming closer to where there was a circulation center. I started to think, maybe they might pull the trigger and go ahead and upgrade it at 5 o'clock, and that's what the National Hurricane Center did.
Indeed, and a little earlier than I'd said yesterday. I thought that they would wait until tomorrow morning when the system was closer to the Virginia Capes, but I guess they said, well, what the heck, might as well pull the trigger. They had a 90% probability for the thing to develop into Fay or get a name as of midday today, so you knew that it was indeed going to be a scenario where they were going to probably name it this afternoon, and they did, and now we're going to be dealing with tropical rains tomorrow, mainly I think in the 12-hour time frame from about noon.
Rain is the bigger deal here, no question. Joe, you explained that part. My headsets just went bad on me, so I got to go switch them. So you go ahead and explain that, and I'll be right back.
All righty. Well, we're going to be in line for some significant rainfall tomorrow. Tropical showery rains. Could even have a few gusty thunderstorms thrown in for good measure later tomorrow and into tomorrow evening as Fay tracks northward. I can remember one particular tropical system way back in 1971. That was Tropical Storm Doria, which took a very similar track to what Fay is about to take relative to us. It'll go almost directly over the tri-state area. Now, with Doria back in 71, parts of the tri-state area got upwards to something like 6 inches of rain. Not saying that's going to happen later tomorrow and tomorrow night with Fay, but it does carry with it tropical moisture, which may translate into some locally higher amounts. Generally speaking, we're thinking about 2, maybe 3 inches of rain. At least that's what this forecaster is thinking. But any convection,
I'm on the same page with you. I have 2 to 4.
You have 2 to 4?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, it's going to be. I just mentioned, Joe, while you were away, I was recalling Tropical Storm Doria back in 71, which dropped in some cases as much as 6 inches. And, not completely and totally ruling that out, because this is tropical moisture, which tends to really sometimes produce quite a bit of rainfall, more than what is anticipated. And if any thunderstorms get involved, and there could even be some training with this, we could see quite a bit more than that 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 inch total.
This moves along. It's not flying like a rocket ship, but it is moving slow enough where you have to be a little bit cautious with regards to the upside possibilities with the rainfall along and west of the low track. So
right.
I think, and that's another conundrum here, because we've got various models going in all sorts of directions, either just inland or just offshore. If you want to split the difference, which is kind of what the Hurricane Center did. We'll show you on the spaghetti plots that most of the spaghetti plots are actually along or just off the coast. So that's going to make a subtle difference for somebody. And the other thing I would point out, too, with respect to the areas east of the center where the Storm Prediction Center has a marginal risk of severe weather for Long Island and southern New England, they also have a 2% a 2% chance for a tornado. That's that 2% doesn't sound like a big number, but basically it's take any point in any 25-mile radius, and there's a 2% probability that there's a tornado within 25 miles of any point in that marginal risk zone. So that's not as small as it sounds. Plus, this is the kind of scenario, Joe, where I can remember a number of times with lows going up just to the west of Long Island with a southeast or an east-southeast flow in the summertime, where you wind up with water spouts and small tornadoes that have developed. So I certainly wouldn't rule that out. I don't think wind is a big deal here. I think wind, there may be some fringe gales along the immediate coast, maybe if you're standing on the beaches, but this does not appear, this is not going to be a situation where we're talking about 20 to 30 with gusts to gale force well inland. I just don't see that.
No, I don't think the wind is going to be, and I even saw one forecaster on one of the TV stations this afternoon warning everybody of potential power outages. And I did like a double take there. I said,
From the
really?
wind?
You actually think that there could be power outages with
Well,
this?
maybe he was thinking it was going to be wet snow and it was going to weigh down on the power lines.
Well, I don't think we'll have too much to worry about wind wise. Again, the rain is going to be the main concern, and the thunderstorms, which, as you pointed out, even though we're under a marginal risk, in an isolated case, could spawn a funnel cloud or even a tornado. So we'll keep an eye on that tomorrow. And I think, Joe, the main time frame will be, even though the first raindrops may arrive before sunrise tomorrow morning in some places,
Right.
I think the main bout, the 12-hour interval of potentially heavy rainfall, will come from about noon to midnight tomorrow night.
From
I think
south
after
to
midnight,
north. From
yeah,
south to north. South
right.
Jersey gets in it first, gets out, and Southeast PA gets in it first, and Delaware, and those areas during the early morning hours before daybreak, you'll start to see the rain creep up, and they'll be the first to get out of it, probably around early to mid afternoon from south to north in those areas. Um, we'll get some maps and let's get going here. Just want to do just a really quick. Robert Russo, thank you for hitting super chat from the get-go. Joe and I appreciate it greatly.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Wow.
much. Want to welcome those of you who are watching from the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee Weather app, from both my Facebook page and Joe's Facebook page, from Twitter, and also if you happen to be listening to this on in a podcast format. We are now you can get us on a podcast, so you can just kind of plug in your headsets and your earbuds and have at it to whatever you're doing, in case you can't sit around and watch the entire show on video. Okay, so let's get rolling here. I'm going to start off. Let's review, Joe, the watches and warnings that are up, and the tropical storm warnings are up for New Jersey, Long Island, and coastal Connecticut. They're not up for Delaware or for the Delmarva Peninsula or points south, and the reason being that the tropical storm warnings are about the wind, and the gradient doesn't really tighten there. The west side of this is not going to have a whole lot in the way of wind. So you have to really either be very close to the center, or if you're on the east side of the center, where we do have an area of gales out to the east. So that's why those areas down in Delaware and the Delmarva Peninsula, Chesapeake Bay, not in a tropical storm warning. However, you are in a flash flood watch. And that flash flood watch runs up through New Jersey, a small portion of Southeast PA, and southern New England, including Long Island, New York City, Philadelphia, Hartford. It looks like I got to double check. It looks like it's east of Baltimore and east of Washington. So the dark red that's out in the coastal waters, those are all tropical storm warnings, and they extend to the counties in New Jersey, again, Long Island, and southern Connecticut. Not to ignore the rest of the country, we do have some various heat advisories up. We also have some severe weather tonight in parts of northwestern Illinois, eastern Iowa, southern Wisconsin, and some hot and dry weather in the southwest. But really, tonight is all going to be about Tropical Storm Fay. And I have the recon here, which I'll get to in a moment. But I put up the Hurricane Center's forecast track from the 5 o'clock advisory, Joe. It looks like they have it touching Atlantic City and running right up New York Harbor, up the Hudson River on their forecast track.
Right, right. And that's why, Joe, when you were away for those few moments, I was telling our audience that this reminded me of basically the same track that Tropical Storm Doria took in August of 1971. I think Doria was moving a little quicker and maybe was a little more loaded than Fay. Of course, Fay is just getting her act together right now. But again, a very similar track, straight south to north, coming right across the tri-state area. And you know that somebody is going to get quite a bit of rainfall out of this in our local area, as I said, later tomorrow and into tomorrow evening.
By the way, in terms of strengthening, this might this has a little bit more time to pick up a little bit more strength, but it won't pick up much more unless there's some sort of baroclinic stuff that goes on that causes it to intensify a little bit. The ocean water temperatures north of 35 degrees north, while they are above normal, and in some places like off the New Jersey coast and off the coast of Long Island, significantly above normal, they are also below the threshold to support a tropical storm. Usually you need water temperatures at least at about 26 Celsius or starting at about 78 or 79 Fahrenheit. We're not there. We're more like 72, 73. The buoy south of Fire Island is at 76. It'll hold together whatever's moving up, but there's nothing. The water temperatures here are not ever conducive for systems to strengthen. So if you're thinking that, well, maybe this will strengthen to a hurricane or a strong tropical storm, it's real. The hurricane's not happening. The strong tropical storm is probably unlikely. The only thing I would worry, be somewhat concerned, is if the upper feature somehow gives it a little bit of juice and the low drops a couple of extra millibars. That might tighten up the gradient a little bit. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really change the outcome. And Joe, WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, folks, on their latest, I got the 7-day map, but most of this is a lot of what's in the east is front end loaded. They actually have gone a bit more bullish. I mean, they've been bullish on the rainfall, but they've upped the ante a little bit now, and they've got that dark red 3 to as much as 5 inches of rain coming in from the Delmarva Peninsula into the southern half of New Jersey, and then it lightens up a little bit, but it's still 3-inch plus rains over northern New Jersey and going up the Hudson Valley, and also in western Massachusetts, western Connecticut, down to Long Island, a little band of 3-inch plus rains. And again, we're squeezing most of this in a small time, relatively small time frame. That's a lot of water to put down in about 8 to 12 hours.
Absolutely, absolutely. When you get that much, you that could lead to flash flooding, and we may very well be looking at that. And I'm looking here at a map that I don't often look at, Joe. The seven on tropical tidbits, the 700 to 400 millibar heights, relative humidity percentage.
On what model?
This is on the GFS.
Okay, hang on. I'll see if I can pull it up. Are you on the tight northeast view?
No, I just look at the eastern United States.
Okay, hang on. Let me bring it there. Also, we'll have the map on the screen, and you can go ahead and talk about it. So, okay, so it's the 700 to 400.
Right. Go to precipitation and moisture.
Okay.
And then scroll all the way down to the bottom.
I see it. Relative humidity. Here it is.
Yeah. And I like to look at this because the really nice dry air is in brown, and the very moist air is in a very dark shade of green. And the movement of Fay up the coast, you can actually see the way that moisture just pinwheels or swirls around the center of the storm. And we're in that very deep shade of green, we being the tri-state area, at 18Z tomorrow. So that's why I say that, in our area, probably after the noon hour or 1, 2 o'clock is when we'll be into it. But it's moving things so quickly that by the time we get to 6Z on Saturday,
it's done. That's long gone by then.
2 a.m. Yeah, you're right. Not only is it long gone, not only is it well off to our north, but we're even into a little bit of brown, which kind of suggests that we may even see some clearing of the skies rapidly in the after midnight hours on Friday night, Saturday morning.
By the way, if you look to the west of there's a 1,005 low in northern Illinois. There's another upper trough that's dropping southeastward and swinging east. So this is the lever that I've been talking about in the upper flow. That as that thing in the plains moves into the lower lakes, it lifts up Fay straight northward. And then, of course, that next trough swings around, and it looks like it's got us in some showers and thunderstorms here late Saturday morning, early Saturday afternoon, because the dark green in a comma shape like a cold front
Right.
or an upper trough swings through. So there are probably going to be some showers and storms to contend with during the day Saturday as this upper trough goes by. And then there's yet another one, by the way. And this is the one that concerns me a bit is Monday, that we might see some severe weather out of this. But that's our next forecast problem after Fay is done. But this is a very good map sequence to look at with respect to getting at least you get a good feel here of the magnitude of the moisture in the Atlantic that's coming in on the southeast flow.
Right.
And when you look at some of the really extreme rainfalls that have occurred in the coastal areas, they have more often than not have thunderstorms clusters aside. I'm not talking about those, but in a situation like this where you have a developing low or some kind of system that you're dealing with, the strong southeast flow under certain conditions has produced some rather extreme rainfall. So you always have to be cautious when you've got that tropical fire hose firing at you toward the coastline on the southeast wind. And that's sort of what you have here for tomorrow.
And you're mentioning of thunderstorms on Saturday. I believe, I haven't seen the update, but Storm Prediction Center had marginal risk of severe weather over us on Saturday as well.
They did.
I didn't.
I didn't look for Saturday. They have it over us. They have it over for Long Island and southern New England for tomorrow. And again, the situation like this has in the past produced some small tornadoes and some water spouts. I'm going to bring up the recon, and then we're going to go to the satellite loops here. And this was the tip off to me. Well, first off, when with the plane on its route, they closed off this very broad center east of Cape Hatteras, and that looked fairly obvious early on. But you can see where the gales are. That bright green, those 40 to 45 knot winds, are out about 60 or 70 miles east of the center, and continue out to the east. And then the plane just kind of went up and then came in from the northeast and ran into another area of gales, a little bit lower in terms of the wind speeds, but still gales running from 34 to 40 knots. And I think I see there's like a couple of bright green 40 to 45 knot wind barbs there. But if you look on the west side of the low, that 1006 pressure is what the plane found. They closed off a broad center. And on the west side and on the south side, the winds are all 20 knots or less. So this is why the wind, at least for the areas from, say, coastal Virginia on up into through the Delmarva Peninsula through Delaware, why there are no tropical storm warnings up for the land, because even though the center may wind up passing very close, the wind on the west side here is not going to be very much. Now, the other thing to look at, I've got the satellite loop. And what happened this, if you saw a loop of this during this morning and you look at it now, you can see the circulation center is right on the edge. Most of it is underneath that convection that's blowing up on the north side. So this is why I think Miami, the Hurricane Center, pulled the trigger on this. They had the gales offshore, but they needed that center to kind of get underneath that convection, and it is doing that. And this is all going to, it has a little bit more time to strengthen. It's also, Joe, it's fairly close to the coast. It's not that far offshore, but it's just offshore enough.
And it's beginning to look, it's acquiring that classic look of a tropical cyclone as it sits now off of the Carolina coastline and again advances slowly northward. We'll probably have a nice, clear, or mainly fair evening here, and then
looks good on the satellite tonight on the northeast. I mean, there's some on this zoomed in view, Joe. You look at there's a big thunderstorm blow up well northwest of you, but it up in the Catskills, and you could actually almost touch the cloud top on this loop.
Right.
It's very impressive. And another one up in north central Massachusetts, another one in northeastern PA. Very, very, the picture quality is amazing.
You can even see, Joe, that thin curving band of cirrus moving across southern and central New Jersey. It almost looks like the outflow.
Yes.
From a tropical or storm or hurricane. So
Do you get the sense this is now the sixth named storm? It is not even July the 10th. It is July the 9th. Okay, so we are now through the F storm. And well, it is the earliest we've ever gotten to the F storm since we just set the record for getting the earliest to the E storm. Do you get the sense that this year everything in the Atlantic wants to spin?
Yeah,
Really,
yeah,
in active hurricane seasons, that's what happens. Everything starts spinning. This is where the Canadian may actually verify. This is where the Canadian model will, who I always joke about the fact that how it loves to spin everything in its path, uh, uh, every hurricane season, and everything becomes a Category 5. Well, you know what? This year the Canadian may actually be on something if this trend continues with these storms developing. And by the way, none of these first six storms have been hurricanes; they've all been tropical storms. And if you go back to the season with Hurricane Irene, Irene was the first hurricane of the season. The prior eight systems were all tropical storms.
right. And despite that, the so-called Godzilla cloud of Sahara dust that flew off of Africa, and you'd say to yourself, "Oh, that's certainly going to keep any tropical activity down." That has done very little. In fact,
Well, right,
most of the activity has been on this side of the Atlantic,
right.
not on that side.
In the tropical Atlantic, down in the Caribbean, yes, that's true. But the Saharan dust has not really moved up, penetrated, had any penetration of consequence in the subtropics. And on up to about 35 degrees north. That area has remained clean. If you remember, those dust plumes all pretty much went straight west and got suppressed off the east coast, through the south, off the southeast coast and out offshore. So, and this thing is, formed well north of there. So, the subtropics are having a field day here early on. The the other thing I wanted to go to, let me see if I saved it. Yeah, I did. So this is these are the 7 o'clock obs off the North Carolina coast. The wind gusts, as I said, on the west side. Now Hatteras has got a north wind, and the center is about 40 or so miles east northeast of Hatteras. So you have to really go out far enough, a fair distance offshore before you start to run into even the convection. So as far as activity going on at the moment, in areas in southeastern Virginia, into the Delmarva Peninsula, eastern North Carolina, it's very quiet. There's some scattered showers and thunderstorms well inland in North Carolina, near Raleigh, Durham, down to Fayetteville, and points west, and also scattered into parts of South Carolina. But that's it. And of course, we had an incredibly steamy day. But you can see overlaid on this, by the way, the tropical storm warnings that are up for Long Island and New Jersey, the flash flood watches that are up for Delaware, Maryland, the Delmarva Peninsula, Southeast PA, and then up the Hudson Valley into the eastern Catskills, across Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. And we still got some 90-degree readings left over from the heat today in places not too far away.
Well, we got to 92 here at about 3:39 this afternoon here in Putnam County, and if you look at that, that was our fourth 90-degree day out of the last five. We didn't get there yesterday because of all the cloud cover, and in fact, I think we didn't even get out of the 70s yesterday. But today, all that sunshine, boosting temperatures up into the 90s, and now tomorrow, again, with all the clouds coming in, probably a day where I think temperatures will be confined to near 80 or 70s to near 80. It'll be dependent upon how quickly the cloud cover and also the precipitation gets in here. But we'll be back to muggy and humid and warm to hot weather over the weekend. No question about that.
By the way, the observations at 7 o'clock up and down the coast already setting the table up for Fay because winds have turned southeast and east. The dew points are up in the middle 70s in some places. Down in coastal Delaware, for example, a dew point of 75 at Ocean City. Now I know that's right on the coast. The dew point there, 75. I mean, this is really supercharged tropical air, and you've got these dew points into the low 70s up into Connecticut, into Massachusetts, southeastern New England. And
Look at Tom's River. Look at Tom's River. 79, 79.
they have a 79 dew point.
Is
Yep,
that what?
79, 79, 100% relative humidity, a 79 dew point. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's really insane. I'm going to get one of those Dubai dew points of 105.
Oh, please.
I wanted to go up into upstate New York because it's pretty warm there. It's actually hot there. You can see the large heat advisory up for much of central New York with temperatures up in the low 90s again. Also up the Hudson Valley into northeastern New York and northwestern Vermont, upper 80s to low 90s. A little bit better in Maine, mid 70s to low 80s at 7:27 in the evening. So it looks pretty good. And of course, we're seeing a few scattered thunderstorms showing up there on the radar. So let me clean up my screen here for one moment. It's just to give me a little bit of room to work with, and let's go to which model would you like to start with tonight?
Well, we might as well start with the GFS, I guess.
Okay, so we have up the one you had up before with that 700 to 400 with the moisture field. So I'm switching to the 500, and again, it's the same story. Nothing has changed from the standpoint of what we were profiling the last couple of days with this low, this weakness, this upper weakness or small upper low that represents Fay off the North Carolina coast, and on the upper left you see the trough that is moving into the western lakes. So that just kind of levers it up and brings it up the coast. That trough actually amplifies on Saturday. So that's your potential for thunderstorms later Saturday morning and Saturday afternoon. And then another short wave swings around, and this is for Monday, where we might have the chance for some showers and storms. So whatever winds up happening with the heavy rains for tomorrow, Sunday looks like the better of the 2 weekend days. That looks like the one day that we might be able to squeeze out much of the day with not having to worry about anything other than a pop-up.
Right, right. I think that's, I will go with that. In fact, I said that yesterday. I think I thought that Sunday would be the better of the two, and it looks like that's going to be the case. And then we go right back to another round of Drek on Monday.
Yes. Okay, so let's bring up the tight surface map of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, and we'll just take a look at. We'll have the GFS. Now the GFS's view. This is the 18Z. So I'm getting my first look at it, and the GFS wants to take this surface low inland over the Delmarva Peninsula and up northward. Now, it's about as far left as any of the models are. Doesn't mean it's right. It just this is what it's doing. And this would certainly argue that much of the heavy rain will wind up going across New Jersey into eastern Pennsylvania, and then on points north up into central New York if it's that far left. I just don't know that it's going to be that way. When we look at the NAM model, and again, it has to do with the fact that the upper flow, the way it is, you've got the trough is not very strong to the west. The upper low in the east is kind of weak. So you're going to be subject to just some small subtle changes. The NAM wants to keep the surface low right along the immediate coast, Joe. Just sort of wobbles it along and offshore and brings it right over my house sometime Friday night at around 1 or 2 a.m. And you'll notice, folks, the low does kind of weaken a bit as it moves northward. The gradient just sort of relaxes somewhat. So again, this is why I don't think this is going to be a big rain producer. But the NAM to me looked like it made the most sense. It actually matched up fairly well with what the Hurricane Center did. I don't know about it crossing Long Island, but I kind of think the Hurricane Center's got the right idea with maybe just taking it straight north up the Hudson River.
Right, and again, if that happens, then we here in the tri-state area will get a copious amount of moisture as opposed to what the GFS is saying. The GFS, as you just mentioned, Joe, kind of nudge everything off to the left or to the west. Not to say that we're not going to see any rain here, but the lion's share of the really hefty stuff, if the GFS is right, is west of the Hudson River and on into the Jersey-Pennsylvania border. But I agree with you. I I like what the NAM is depicting better, and that seems to be what the Hurricane Center is going with as well.
Especially since the actual center kind of reformed a little bit further to the east. So I think that supports the idea of what the Hurricane Center did with their forecast. And if the NAM's track is correct, there's going to be this narrow 2 to 4 inch band of rainfall that is going to be along eastern New Jersey, the eastern half of New Jersey, through central Long Island in that zone, and then just go up and down the coast. If the GFS is correct with its further west track, and I don't believe that it is, by the way, you see where how the heavy rains on the GFS tilt in a northwest fashion from Delaware and southern New Jersey northwest into northwest New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania with the 2 to 4 inches of rain in that setup, and much less as you go east. In fact, Joe, I barely get half an inch out of this if the GFS is right because it's so far left. But I just don't believe that it is, that it's going to be that far west.
Yeah, no, it doesn't seem to make any sense. When you think about tropical systems, normally when you think of a tropical system, that the lion's share of the moisture is to the north and to just to the east of the center. I don't understand why they've got all that rain off to the west, but well,
Well, here's a model that I haven't pulled up in a long time. The RGEM. It just occurred to me to take a look at the Canadian RGEM model, which in the wintertime I like to use. I think it works well most of the time in certain situations. And here it has the heavy rain and the surface low right along the immediate coast, and then takes it up the Hudson River, just kind of weakens it maybe a bit more. But what it shows is the low is roughly in the same place that the Hurricane Center has, but it goes bonkers with the rain over me. I mean, absolutely clobbers Long Island and Connecticut, and even into Bayou, Joe, in the Hudson Valley. The rainfall amounts on the RGEM um, are pretty substantial. I have one of those little red dots there sitting. I don't know, what is that, 6 inches that it has just east southeast of me, but it is tilted more toward the coastline. And again, I think that makes a little bit more sense in a case like this.
well, it's what I said, about a half an hour ago when we were talking about the similarities in the path of this to Doria in 1971. Doria, if my memory serves me correct, dropped 6 inches of rain in parts of the tri-state area, and one has to wonder whether or not Fay, indeed, if Fay continues to develop and draw in more of that tropical moisture, whether or not that is going to happen in parts of our area as well. Even though we're broad brushing our region with 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 inches, wouldn't be out of the question, Joe, to see some one or two isolated spots, get 5 or 6 inches out of this. We've seen it before, and could certainly happen again.
Oh yeah. The European, by the way, is the European. Now we have it in 24-hour increments here. So your low running just east of the Delaware coast, and then suddenly by Saturday morning. The only thing about the European, Joe, is I think the European is a little bit too slow. It's been slower with this all along, so it might be a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit too slow because by Saturday morning at 8 a.m. the low center is like near Poughkeepsie, and I just think that's a little bit too slow. Maybe at 2 a.m. it's in Poughkeepsie. I don't think it's going to be there at 8 a.m. I think it'll be further north. And then of course you've got this weather front that you're going to have to deal with coming through on Monday. So, and there's your 99 low in southeast Ohio that sets us up for some showers and storms for Saturday afternoon. So yeah, I guess we pretty well covered it. I just want to really quick take a look at the upper air pattern in the long range.
Okay.
And I haven't gotten my warning, by the way, that I'm running out of data. So my strategy of keeping the live streams under control in terms of time has worked for me. So here's here's your trough on Saturday that lifts up. You got this other arm that comes in through on Monday that pulls out. The European starts to build this big upper high late next week from New Mexico east to the Carolinas, and we are once again on the edge of this. We're in a northwest flow, and Whoops. Hang on. We're in a northwest flow. That's on the 240. Let's run the G. Let me just pull up the GFS to see if it's it looks about the same. But again, it still doesn't get the whole ridge in here. It gets us on the edge of it. And the GFS sort of keeps it there in the longer range, but it doesn't make that full punch into the northeast. So I guess we're going to have to just kind of sit on pins and needles, trying to figure out if we're going to get into some kind of heat wave pattern or if it's just going to be a continuation of what we've had. And
the hand-drawn fog, for days 6 and 7, next Wednesday and Thursday, actually has some kind of a backdoor front coming through our area, through from New England, and I did like a double take with that. I said, "Really? Is that going to be the story?" Because we're looking at the possibility of some extreme heat for the middle and latter part of next week, and yet if this backdoor front really is there or is a possibility, kind of makes you wonder whether or not we'll get those extreme temperatures next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Well, we'll see. Steve Lapointe hitting Super Chat tonight. Thank you for your support. Really appreciate it. Robert Russo, you hit it earlier, but give you also another thank you here late in the live stream. And thanks to all of you from time to time. A number of you have hit Super Chat. And Joe and I both really do appreciate it. Shall we run through a very quick Briller Jeopardy before we say goodbye?
Sure.
Okay, so let's see. Let me just find it. And
that's the problem, is finding it. I'm looking for mine.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay, so here we go. Question 1 for you on Le Jeopardy Day Brillard. And the chairman, Scott Briller, is out working tonight. We wish him well and stay safe, Scott. There have been 7 states that have had a low temperature of at least 60 below. How many can you name?
At least 60 below?
And then he says baseball rules apply here, so 3 strikes and you're out. So
okay,
there have been 7 states that have had a low temperature of at least 60 degrees below zero. Can you name those states?
Okay, I'll throw the first one out. It would be Alaska.
Okay.
Montana.
Okay.
North Dakota.
3 so far. 3 left.
Minnesota would have to be International Falls.
4.
Right. Okay. Idaho.
5. There's 1 left.
Dare I say? All right. So 3 strikes, I'm out, right?
Right. So you've gotten them all right so far. So you're down to the. So you have 3 chances to get the 6th one.
Wyoming.
No.
No. All right. I'm not going to say. Well. In the Cascades, maybe Washington?
No.
No. Did I say South Dakota?
You did not say South Dakota.
Can I say South Dakota?
You can say South Dakota. Is that your final answer?
That's my final answer.
No.
Yeah.
So you struck out there. It's Colorado.
Colorado.
Speaking of Colorado, Ruthless Goat, who's one of our regulars here, messaged me. I saw a post from him earlier today. He's going to be at 100 degrees tomorrow in Loveland, which is about 12 above normal. And I messaged him back. I said, I'll trade you your 100 for the dew points here and the humidity that we've had, which today, as we said earlier, was just absolutely brutal.
Wow.
So that goes. Do you have one for me?
I have not been able to. As I saw it this morning, and I said, okay, I'm going to make sure I know where it is. And now
okay, you know what? Save it for tomorrow. But I got to tell you this. By the way, just lower your head ever so slightly so everybody can see your beautiful eyes. Thank you. Exactly. So this one, I thought this was.
This is CBS.
Right, the Can't Be Serious Network. So I was watching Perry Mason yesterday. These are the ones that are running in the morning, so I watch them at night as I DVR them. And this was, I still think they were in season one, and it's an episode that I saw before, but it never occurred to me. The name of the one of the characters in there, and who winds up being the killer. The character's name is Willard Scott.
Willard Scott, I saw that. I saw
Yes.
that on the cast of characters.
Yes, and
So
this was in the late 50s. I wonder why. I mean, I don't know if I don't think Willard was well known at that point nationwide in the late 50s. But if I'm wrong about that, I beg to differ. I just thought it was kind of that's a little bit of an unusual name to come up with for a character. But then
but did you
again,
but did you watch?
oh, I
Was it
watched, and
was
he
it
was.
him? It wasn't him though.
No, it wasn't Willard Scott, but the
Right.
character's name was Willard
It was
Scott,
Willard
and
Scott.
he was also and he also was the killer. And he wound up being the killer, and he did it because he wanted to do he wanted to do anything to get away from his nag of a wife, who nagged him for 16 years from the moment he said "I do," and he
Oh,
made
geez.
that point on the stand.
Right.
While his wife out there sitting there just cringing.
I
Uh,
did notice I did notice the name on the list. I also took note of the fact that it was season one, episode 39.
Yes, they used it 39 in those days,
Incredible.
and I believe the actor, the guy who played who was the defendant, I think he did a couple of Superman episodes. I don't. It was the first. So he kind of looked like the Professor Periwinkle.
Yeah.
Remember?
Um, well, you're not talking about Sterling Holloway. He was
I don't think it was. No, I don't
he
think
was
it was
Professor
him.
Twiddle.
It
Um,
was the guy looked like Professor Periwinkle,
yeah,
but he
yeah.
wasn't Professor Periwinkle.
And I saw last night on Twilight Zone they had Dabbs Greer, who played the Reverend in Little House on the Prairie, and they also had Howard McNear, who played Floyd, the barber,
Yes.
on the Andy Griffith Show, and the guy with the throaty voice, the Andy Devine.
Yes. They made a good living in those days. If you were a character actor and you got hooked up with one show, um, you, you could show up every 6 or 7 episodes playing somebody different.
Exactly.
Sometimes you're the murderer, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're the good person, sometimes you're not. You know.
Incidentally, happy anniversary to all who may remember 84 years ago today, Joe, at Central Park or wherever they were keeping the official records for the National Weather Service at that time, 106 degrees, the highest or hottest temperature, at least in Manhattan, July the
Yes.
9th, 1936. And 2 days after that, on July 11th, they opened up the Triborough Bridge, now, of course, the Robert F. Kennedy Bridge.
Yes.
And we still had hot weather on that day. And I think the first person to cross the Triborough Bridge was Franklin Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, and I don't think his car was air conditioned.
All right. All right. So that wraps it up for tonight, folks. Don't forget, if you can't catch us on the live stream, or you can't catch us on a replay of the live stream, or maybe it's not convenient for you to watch a video, you'd rather just listen to the show, you can do that now on in podcast format on Spotify. Also available on Google and about 4 or 5 other podcasts, and I think we may also now be on Apple. So it doesn't list it officially, but I saw somebody somebody had listened to the show on a podcast on on a Mac. So maybe it's already there. But we're on Anchor, Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and Spotify. So and it's the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Okay, so Joe and I will be here tomorrow night, God willing.
Oh,
To
please don't say that.
Well, I have to go out tomorrow afternoon in the middle of all of this.
Oh, okay.
Because my buddy Phil is retiring from the police force here in Suffolk County, and I got to go see his walkout, and and of course the party afterward. And a
Yes, of
big
course.
congratulations to him. He's what is it, 30 some odd years now he's been on, so maybe longer. I think 34, 35 years.
Is he married?
Oh yes,
Okay.
his
So
wife
now
is.
his wife will have a good night's sleep beginning tomorrow night.
Yes,
So,
that she will. So we wish both of them all the luck in the world. Phil's a good friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, and we talk every day. So I'm glad he's reached this point. I once told him, I said, "You'll know when it's time," and he finally figured that out. So he's getting ready for a new life ahead. So good for him. All right, have a great night, Joe. Everybody stay safe. Remember, tropical storm warnings up, flash flood watches up, and all the rest of it. And we'll have you updated on Patreon, on the websites, and everything